So we developed a set of machines that can do the chunky yarn. And then we had 5 people in a small garage knitting. Like our first batch was 800 blankets. And in my calculation, it was like, okay, 800 blankets should last me like a year, 1.5 years. They were sold out after 2 weeks. In the first 9 months, we didn't do any paid performance marketing. We just went out and gifted a lot of blankets to editors who wrote about sleep products, people in the sleep space. That just also informed our identity along the way. We didn't have a lot of marketing dollars, so how can you be clever?
This episode is brought to you by Contentful. Marketers, you know that feeling when your creative clicks, when that social post sends engagement through the roof, when your outside of the box campaign hits ROI positive, when a personalized homepage turns prospects into customers? It's utter marketing bliss. Contentful helps you create tailored omni-channel experiences without working overtime. No stress, no limits, only possibilities. Get the feels at contentful.com. Welcome to the D2C podcast, Dr. Kathrin Hamm. We don't often have a doctor on the podcast. You are a doctor of economics, is that what it is?
Yeah, economics.
Very cool. Well, welcome. How you doing?
Doing well. Excited to be on the pod. I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm a big fan of your blanket. You sent me a Bearaby weighted blanket, and I got to say my daughter is a huge, huge fan of it. We've had weighted blankets before. What I like about Bearaby is it's like this second wave of weighted blanket. We're going to get into that a little bit, but maybe start with the why. Why did you build Bearaby?
So, as I mentioned, I'm an economist. So I have a PhD in economics. So I'm one of the people who studied for a very long time. So didn't initially have any intention on quitting my job once I had landed one at the World Bank as an economist. So wasn't my first, idea. But I had sleep issues. So I was just transferred, started my career in Washington and moved to India. And I was always a light sleeper. And at that point, I just really it got worse and worse. Wake up multiple times at night, couldn't fall back asleep at night. And at that point, I did a lot of research looking what are sleep solutions, natural sleep solutions that are out there. And I more or less stumbled across weighted blankets because, as you mentioned, there has been a first wave of weighted blankets around, actually more than 30 years in the medical niche. So you could find them in a pharmacy. And, I was had tried a lot of different things. And at that point, weighted blankets were more positioned for children, children with sensory needs, children with anxiety. But there was in some medical articles, they already mentioned that the same weight, an evenly distributed weight on your body can help adults sleep better. And I'm why not give it a try? And so I ordered one of these blankets in a German pharmacy. And 6 weeks later, I get one of these massive bean bags, the orange blue with all these little plastic beads in it. And it didn't look like a sleep product at all, not something that you want to keep on your couch or that you want to keep on your bed. But I tried it. And it was the single best thing I've ever tried. So it absolutely worked for me. I put it on my body. I passed out 5 minutes later and I took a 4-hour nap. When you wake up after nap and you don't know who you are. And so it was really this concept of weight really worked for me, where you could just see it also on your sleep tracker. My sleep cycles became more regular, had more longer deep sleep. And so that was the initial how I got into the product. But then after using it for a while, you realize all the shortcomings, because then looking back at it, and even it has been around for a very long time, nobody had really innovated anything. It has been this beanbag style since 30 years. It was always in that medical niche. So what happened is it made me really hot. Imagine if you sleep under 15, 20 pounds of plastic. It just it's not something that works for the long term. And then I started crafting a little bit outside of work and researching, and literally there was no product like this out there. And so that's made me intrigued, but at the same time, it was not easy because I was like, how big is this category? You know, like no one had done something like this. When you look at other D2C products like toothbrush or socks, you have a rough estimate, like, you know, who are the big players in the market? What's the market size? And I knew kind of if I wanted to do it, I had to create like a whole new category. And I also had to come up with like a new, better product. So there were like two challenges. And it took me quite some time to like get into it. But then like my first step was launching a Kickstarter campaign. So I quit my job. Took like the $120,000 that I had from my retirement savings and put that all in a Kickstarter campaign. And I think that's like, we launched like in October, and like in November, we had already like $250,000 and like huge excitement around the product. And I think that's like this first proof point where I'm like, aha, there is something, there is some market, there is some demand. And you start understanding also who are actually the people like outside of me who are looking for such a product, because there was no market research besides like these initial proof points that I had developed through this initial Kickstarter campaign.
I just had a question, because when my daughter was using it, she was noticing how breathable the blanket. You mentioned previous weighted blankets. I've used previous weighted blankets. You wake up and your face feels all pressed, or it isn't the best feeling. But the way you've built yours, it's incredibly breathable with it being these big chunky. Did you know how you wanted to solve the form factor like pretty early on, or was that something that sort of came to you in a spark of genius?
No, I did like lots of like trial and errors, and basically like I think the insight was that, as you say, like the beads don't solve anything. But when you have like natural fibers and you mix like just natural fibers in a chunky yarn and like a layered yarn, you get like a very weighted product or heavy product that you can customize no matter how heavy you want it. You can go up to like, 30, 40 pounds. But at the same time, you take the beads out, you just have natural fibers and it is breathable, right? So air just naturally circulates, and it took like these main issues out, or like the number one issue that people have is like that the weighted blanket makes them hot, and the beads are also, when they're shifting, it's not evenly distributed, like it's noisy. And so we took all of that by just creating this chunky yarn. We took all of that out. And I think that's also one of the reasons when I then moved into D2C later, like my initial customer group, 50% when we did a survey was people who had a previous weighted blanket and they upgraded to a Bearaby blanket. So we had that was our initial marketing, was just having a better product. But yeah, it was kind of a lot of trial and errors until we got to that construction, and then also filing and patent for it. A second issue that we had to solve was the production, right? I mean, now when you look at, again, bigger categories that are already established, you can just go to a third-party manufacturer and say, like, well, I want something with some customizations. But for me, when I went with like a small knitted blanket, so I had my initial prototype that we had created, and everyone said, well, I've never seen something like this. Like, I don't have the machine for it. Like, we don't have the fabrics. We don't have the people to do it. And also, you don't have a proof point. Yes, we had a successful Kickstarter campaign, but that's about it. So we developed a set of machines that can do the chunky yarn. And then we had 5 people in a small garage knitting. Like our first batch was, I believe it was 800 blankets. And in my calculation was like, okay, 800 blankets should last me like a year, 1.5 years, like taking it really slowly so we can figure things out. And they were sold out after 2 weeks. That was the second proof point when I knew, okay, there is really a lot of demand for the product. And then now we had to figure out how to scale.
Such a smart category, because it takes, like you say, 50% of the people were buying a better weighted blanket, but it also has such a strong visual appeal that anyone seeing it who didn't even know they needed a weighted blanket would see the blanket and be like, oh, that just looks like an amazing blanket. So I bet it probably bridges away from the sort of clinical use case into more of a lifestyle play at the same time, which is a much bigger audience. And it's great to have both of those. You have your foot firmly in the, problem aware anxiety blanket market, market, but then also anyone else who sees it could be like, oh, this could just make my life better.
Definitely. I mean, like I knew from the beginning, which was nice to have like this natural inflow of people who are upgrading to a Bearaby, but then we needed to build a category from scratch. And for that, when we did our branding exercise, we were like, okay, we need to get into a lifestyle segment. We need to kind of educate people what is a weighted blanket and why they should use it. What are like the benefits for it? And then obviously you can't achieve that if you have these, a lot of people on Twitter say mental illness gray, like there was this hashtag like for weighted blankets. So we were very colorful at the beginning. So we have the chunky knit, it already looks good. But then when we chose like how we designed the website and the UX, we were, we had like obviously the traditional home decor colors, but a lot of pink, yellow, purple. So really like just the opposite of like this medical position you would see. But we really lean into lifestyle. We were looking what are the trend colors out there that people are not keeping on their bedroom, but what is like couch worthy, something that you're proud showing off, people coming, visiting your home, going into a living room, and there's like this beautiful blanket in like a stunning pink or like a stunning purple. And I think that was something we definitely leaned in, making lots of different shades and colors that really popped. And I think that's like, so we were at D2C for 5 months, and then we already had our first inbound from retail from West Elm. And we were looking for years into like this category, and like nothing strikes like, Williams Sonoma, the Pottery Barn, West Elm home decor aesthetic. But then we're looking at your blankets and they really fit. So that's something we want to showcase. And then I remember the story when they wanted to come to our showroom, and we were still, like a couple of people in a garage making blankets. So we took like 300 pounds of blankets into Dumbo, where they have the headquarters in Brooklyn, and just kind of like wheeled the blankets in, and they loved them. And we had our first purchase orders and were in their stores. And that got us like these early proof points where people are like, okay, if this is at West Elm. And there was another thing is obviously like you cannot only say a weighted blanket, but we had to have like explainers. So we had with West Elm, and even then later when we expanded 2 years later into Nordstrom, whenever we have like this, the display, we have a couple of descriptions of what a weighted blanket does, what are the statistics of science behind it. So that's kind of where when we're in a design or like in a lifestyle point, we're trying to merge the medical point with it. So explaining people, because when you walk by and you're just touching it, you're like, why is this so heavy? So we've gotten a lot of like, education around that. But I think the visual and like kind of leaning into that. Another point was also, how do you do partnerships? What are like unexpected, fun, clever partnerships that you don't expect from a weighted blanket? I remember early on into COVID, and everyone was like at home. We partnered with a popsicle brand, and we created like a set of like weighted blankets in popsicle colors, and we delivered a package with popsicles to people's home in the summer when it was hot. And people realized, okay, I can use that actually also in July and August. I can sleep under it. I don't get hot, and I can eat a popsicle with it. Or we did a Shake Shack partnership last year. So just kind of trying really to push the boundaries and don't see ourselves in that niche of medical, but like how do we get out into like medical and finding like brands that people are resonating, that are maybe not in a sleep brand, but really like positioned in a lifestyle brand. And we did that very early on.
Super smart. And like Popsicle too is such a nostalgic brand as well. I wanted to actually even back all the way up to your brand name for a second, because I think it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot going on in Bearaby. In maybe from my armchair psychologist perspective, you've got like the comforting aspect of like a teddy bear. It sounds a little bit like therapy, so it sounds like therapeutic. It's also like bear, like you're bearing a weight a little bit. Is that all going on there in the brand name Bearaby? How did you come up with it?
The original like name is like Bear Hug and Lullaby combined, but it actually like I was at the beginning experimenting with different like ideas, what is related to sleep. And then like when the early customer testimonials came in, like the word bear hug, it's like people always describe like it feels like people, like someone is giving me a hug, or people would write on the gift notes, I'm sending you a hug. And so we're like, okay, we need to bring the word like bear and hug in it, and then kind of the lullaby, something that softly, like gently, like melts you into sleep. And then obviously you go through all the other categories, like, is the brand name already taken? Is that when I Google it, is there something comparable to it? And I think we got lucky that there was no comparable name out there. And we also registered a trademark for it early on.
Was there anything with your Kickstarter? So was it really just having a great product that people really can visually recognize as different? Was there a reason that you credit it taking off initially on Kickstarter, just having nailed the brand and the form factor?
I think Kickstarter is still like an audience where you get like attention with like a niche product where people are into the science, people are into new things. And again, that was like 2017. So a lot of people wouldn't know what a weighted blanket was. So even like if we would have put up a website and then we had to, let's say we would have run like regular Facebook ads, I think it would have been much more difficult to get this initial traction with an audience that is like, what is this? What is this category? But I think with Kickstarter, where you have like people who are a bit geeky, who are kind of like always like a bit ahead of the game, looking for like the latest product. I think having like that right audience, I would still like use if I had like another product that is like, where you want to create like a new category. I think Kickstarter is like still a great launch pad. And you can just have like long form storytelling. You can have a video where you explain like, what the product is made of without having to invest too much. So I think it was just the right thing for us. For me at the beginning, it's also like, I had to get into, I don't have a marketing background. So running ads, getting into SEO and all like the good things you have to do as a D2C brand, that heavy lifting went away. So that's why Kickstarter made sense. And then in a secondary step, you have a bit money, you can do a little bit on brand identity, really think it through, get some people who know what they're doing on brand identity. That was like step 2. And then obviously a lot of gifting. I think just for like category building, like being prepared, especially if you don't have a lot of marketing dollars where you have like maybe expensive PR agency or other like bigger like budgets. We just went out and gifted a lot of blankets to editors who wrote about sleep products, people in the sleep space. And then you would get just natural conversions where people just love the product and they give you a tag on Instagram or they give you a static on Instagram or they write about you. So in the first like 9 months, we didn't do any like paid performance marketing. We just kind of naturally did our gifting and basically being relying that naturally people find the product. Later on, we said like, how can we take this to the next level? And we did the Netflix gifting. I don't know if you've seen on our webpage, you would see a couple of placements. So we were on the Sex and the City sequel. We were in Murders in the House, just kind of a lot of things. And that doesn't like, now I'm giving away a secret, doesn't cost us anything, but there are a lot of like set designers of Netflix shows or, any other shows who just need product to decorate the show. And sometimes you can really hit it out of the park and you even get your product integrated. And we did that consistently, like over the years. And now you would see, at the beginning when there was weighted blankets, like maybe 5 years ago, you would still see the old design. And our like recent shows, you would always see our design. And so that's also in the mind of people kind of now when people talk about weighted blankets, even in memes, the knitted weighted blanket comes up. And so kind of getting your design to the forefront, making it part of the culture, even if it's just like sitting there on the couch, there was like the beast in me. There was no like storyline in it, but like it was in Claire Danes' home and you just see kind of like spark. And then you have like, again, these memorable colors, like a very strong green. And then it's kind of people can recognize that. And it's just like builds. And I think that is something like it's free marketing and you can do that along the way. So I think that just also informed our identity along the way. We didn't have a lot of marketing dollars. So how can you be clever without putting a lot of, dollars early on into Facebook or Meta?
The form factor stands alone. How did you find the people who were making the set decisions and add them and send the product? Or how did you actually make the Netflix, relationship come about?
I think when you're like in the scene, like you do your research, and that's all I did at the beginning. I was like, okay, who are like people in the space that we can like educate and gift about the product? And so I had like the different pillars. So I wanted to like know the sleep audience, right? So there's Matthew Walker and like people who've written like books and who are like really well known in like that authority. So that was my first pillar, where like I want to convince people who are already like deep into sleep, who probably already tried a weighted blanket. So they were like very easy to convert. And then the second was like the design people. So I was looking at people who are interior designers, people who design sets for architectural digests. And there's a lot of overlap. People who are like designing for HGTV. These are usually like the same crowd where at some point someone said, well, have you ever considered putting a product on Netflix? I'm like, no, that's too expensive for us. So I know someone who knows someone. So looking into like, who's your audience? For us, it was interior designers. And then there is kind of like, again, word of mouth. I think that's the most important thing. If people, the gifting strategy doesn't work if people don't love the product, right? If you have to push them. But if you give a product and then you get the email, people just, I love it. And I recommended it to 5 other people and you're in the right circle. And then, so we got very popular also in the design community and then just naturally showed up. And that's how we got the Netflix community. And then we got like 4 or 5 contacts for doing the majority of the set designs for these different Netflix shows. And now they just send us an email, say, you have a pink blanket? I'm like, sure, you send it over. And then we're always happy when we see placements 18 months, a year later.
So you set a great organic base. You have a great gifting strategy. You have this awesome Netflix influencer. What was your next sort of move to scale it up? I know you guys have, because you've been around so long, you've expanded into Europe. You've done all sorts of, so many interesting partnerships at this point. What was your move maybe after, at what point, I guess, did you start getting into paid ads?
So I think then like once you do kind of the initial like brand building moments, I think then you just have to do the classical D2C playbook and you have to do it really well. I think that's also what we learned over the years, how ads are changing and kind of like meta is changing. I think just kind of building that up as like obviously you're setting up your email flows, you optimize your website and kind of you're getting through the classical D2C playbook and you're scaling. At the same time, we built out our Amazon and getting like step by step into like the different channels, but we were really intentional. So before I went into kind of a channel, I tried to always like lean in with the product. So we had like one SKU and then early on we got demand for kid sizes. So we built out all the different sizes and we realized there's a second layer of people who are really sleeping hot. So we needed a different fabrication. So we came up with like Tencel fabrics, which is like a tree. It's made from wood pulp. So it's a very cooling, silky, but also sustainable fabric. So I had all like the different product categories I built first. And again, from this early customer feedback from hardcore fans of people like who are like weighted blanket users and kind of just building out this and then going into like the different channels. And I think then organically, if you have a good product, you're naturally like scaling and you're adding up like different SKUs and like different customer groups. You get to customers know better. You have queen, king sizes. You're building all of that. And just like naturally, like last year, we were like, okay, I mean, the market leader in the US, we've hit all the major retailers. We've been on Amazon. So you're getting into like a steady growth where it like feels good. So we're like, okay, what can we do next? And then I think my vision is still, I want to Bearaby kind of, if you are in Hong Kong, if you're in Japan, if you're in Australia, when you hear weighted blanket, I would want your Bearaby to come to your mind first. So building like that international brand. So for us to make a decision like what's next, and we were looking into Europe. I'm from Germany, so it's not that that's why we went into Germany. It also, there was like a lot of like analysis on why it makes sense. So that was our next kind of growth move on just taking our core product where people actually already knew us because of like people also in the US watch Netflix, people read the New York Times, people read Wirecutter. So all the work you've done in the US when you are like the leading spot, I think that's the nice thing. Like it's not always easy building a niche and building a category. Or small in like being in a niche category, but once you kind of like own that category, you're very recognizable and it makes it much easier to go into markets that like already consume US media. So there were obviously a couple of tweaks that we had to do in Germany. Germany has a lot of print press, for example, like long lead takes 3 to 6 months, less digital press heavy. A lot of like more education again needed, like lots of medical newsletters, medical journals. testing, like not like mattress testing sites, but actually testing institute that have their own. So again, when we went there, we had to some form create again the category from scratch. Did a lot of gifting, and that always helps when you have a good product. Just people kind of gravitate to it. And then but for example, like convincing again people, well, why haven't you looked into weighted blankets? I saw you reviewing pillows and mattresses. What about weighted blankets? Well, I never heard about this category. And I'm like, okay, let me educate you. So we started this with Germany, Austria, and Switzerland last year, and opened up basically everything besides UK to scale there further. And now we're taking kind of like another approach where we're scaling Europe. We're looking into UK as another market next. But then now I think we're also in a phase where we're like, okay, we have like the weighted blanket category. And over the years, we got so many requests from customers on other products they want to see from us, or like also ideas that we see as a founder kind of with like heavy in manufacturing. You travel a lot, you see a lot in factories. You're like, oh, that would be nice. I haven't seen that in the US market. We went into sheets, for example, at the end of last year. We realized a lot of our customers that buy weighted blankets that have insomnia, anxiety, also have pain and like skin health issues. So we're like, what are like hypoallergenic sheets? And we found like a nice manufacturer in Portugal that weaves in peppermint, which kills 99.9% of bacteria. So it's like people who have eczema, people who have acne, or just people who really want to have clean sheets. So we're looking for categories with like a functional twist on it. I wouldn't want to put out a product that is like just a cotton sheet. Yes, we can do a high quality sheet, but what is again like a functional angle that helps complement like the sleep system. And I think that's something I'm enjoying right now. So we've built a nice design team last year, building that out further and see like, okay, where can we push the envelope, not only on like functional, but also like additional like products that feel very homey, cozy, and bring like that level of comfort to people. So like building out additional product categories, building that muscle right now with the team in the US market, while at the same time bringing our core product and expanding in other markets has been something we're working on, which keeps me busy.
I just released a podcast on Monday about going into Europe and how absolutely essential it is to treat each country or country grouping at the least, separately. You can't think of it monolithically. You guys mentioned one of your stunts going into the German market was creating egg hats.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think often D2C brands who are trying to go into like European markets, they go with the English first website or English first, where you just dabble a bit to see like, what are my English speaking ads? How far can they get me? Definitely it's a starting point, but to kind of really like crack the market, you need to have the language first. And there's only certain ways. So AI has limitations. Yes, you can translate your SEO pages, but you have to work with someone who understands the nuances of like how people speak about something when you translate it in English, even more so when you have a medical product. So having like all these terms right. How do we talk about like even like a weighted blanket? Again, the term is like very loosely defined. What are the features? How you talk about it? Defining that was like the number one thing that we did. And then at the beginning, we were also like, obviously the beds are smaller in Europe. So you have to think about that. There's no queen and king size in that sense. People have two blankets. People don't share duvets. They have like two blankets. So there's like, again, content, things that you have to adjust, not only on a product level, but just also like, how do people sleep differently in Germany?
Must save a lot of marriages. I never realized that.
It is
people
actually
are not fighting for the blanket as much.
Right, exactly.
I think that's a really neat point. You never know when you're going. We worked with Unilever one time at our agency, and we were filming some UGC in one of our kitchens, and they're like, "This isn't like a British kitchen. This kitchen is way too big. There's too much light. There's you need." So you never know what's going to betray that you're not local in a way, right? I think of Inglourious Bastards and 3 versus 3. You have to make sure you have all that that local stuff right.
Exactly. Also like the visuals, right? So we usually, most of our photos we shoot in Brooklyn, right? You have the Brooklyn brick wall that New Yorkers love. In Europe, people are like, this is not how our homes look like. We have wooden floor. We have white kind of wooden, like larger ceilings. So, I mean, I think that is something you can adjust later. But if you want to get again into architectural magazines, right? Into lifestyle, you need to speak their language. Your Brooklyn pictures will only get you that far. But then when it comes to campaigns, so as I mentioned, one of our strategies is like early on finding like clever brand spins and like partnerships. So we always like to be humorous also as a brand. So we always do April Fools. So we were like, what are we doing like last year for April Fools? So we partnered in the US with like egg influencers. So we made an egg-shaped weighted blankets and we gave it to different farmers who put it on chickens and eggs. And we said, if your chickens sleep under a weighted blanket, the eggs get bigger, just as a April Fools. And I was very early on in Germany. We didn't have a big team. So I was like, can we just run the same egg campaign in Germany? And I kind of started floating it with different people and everyone was so upset. And they're like, this is not funny at all. This concept is not working. And no one while every one of our American team was found it hilarious, you could just see Germans were Germans maybe are not funny in the first place, but just definitely didn't get it. And then someone said, what about it's Easter coming up and everyone in Germany, obviously coloring the eggs, but every Sunday people put egg warmers, egg heads on their eggs. And I'm like, yeah, I remember that growing up. That's a very German thing. We didn't have a lot of time, but then we used our yarn to make just these little egg warmers in matching colors with the blankets. And just around the Easter time, we just send out with a set of these egg warmers. And again, that went viral. We had Manuel Neuer, who's the German soccer goalkeeper, loving the egg warmers, and just got again a lot of hits and virality in the German market with this campaign. And I think that was just again, if you want to get this impact on the market and go beyond the surface level, find out what are these really cultural specificities. I mean, I don't think anyone in the US puts a little egg head on their 4-minute egg, but I think people really appreciate it. And then obviously we did a gifting campaign around it. And then you get more inclusions because people then also feel you're taking them seriously as a brand. You're not just coming and you want to kind of sell a couple of products, but you're actually building a relationship and you understand them. So I think building up on that and also with local colors. So we just started with supply chain. We make our products in India, but now also started with some European sourcing with in Portugal. And I think kind of just, again, having these additional moments where you have a product that is sourced for the European market helped us a lot as well. So Europe has been doing really well for us. But yeah, we had to really rethink what we're doing and talking with a lot of people and getting again in the habits and think, how can we actually be relevant and make sense to people there.
You mentioned meta having changed, and that's a theme on this podcast that we've talked about since the past 6 years that we've been doing it. I remember it was 6 years ago we used to say creative is the new targeting, and we used to say that all the time. And it's now with Andromeda, it very, very much is that is the case. I'm curious. I know you're high level in the company, but from your perspective, what's changed about Meta as a growth engine for a brand like yours?
I mean, for us, definitely the role of the creative strategist has become important. We didn't have one before. And then last year we brought on a full-time role for creative strategist just to come up with different ad angles. And I think just not only the volume, in terms of that you need to have more creative volume, but also just the creative diversity. And I think once you have a marketing team or even with an agency at some point, there's just so many angles you can do. So bringing in some fresh ideas with an in-house team, but then also instead of having one media buying agency that kind of does the creative, we're now working with more specialized agencies that help us with content and just having regular shoots, creating different angles, more fresh takes on it. So creative diversity has been a big one for us where really we had to put our heads together and see okay, how do you get from 40 ads to 900 ads and without them looking the same and again, having a fresh angle getting through all the customer personas. So really digging deep into building out the customer personas and updating them and making sure that everyone in the team understands. We have Michael is one of our customer personas. He's a stressed out professional, like in his mid 40s. So when you wake up at night, I want you to think about Michael and what are like the things that are relevant for him. What is he struggling? And obviously, like we need to have someone who looks like Michael, right? Instead of the other personas. So I think that was like a big one for us on getting to the volume of ads, but then also like the quality and the diversity in the content, and both getting the in-house team staffed up, but then also just having more agencies that are more agile and more shoots.
You mentioned in our pre-interview some issues with copycats, and I imagine when you innovate the form factor of a product so much as you have, there's probably fast followers. What's been the story with copycats?
So the first like 2 years, when you're the first to market, you don't have any copycats. And then one morning you wake up and you have like, oh, wow, that looks a lot like our product. And then kind of like, once you have success, there always naturally people will follow. So I think for us, like an important lesson was that we have our patents that we filed early on. One thing is obviously using them. I think we've been, especially you see a lot of copycats which is really hard to get, like all the Amazon, Alibaba copycats. It's like you shut one thing down and they pop up again. So it's just something you have to keep going. And I think also just being diligent about it. It's just part of like, if you're a brand and if you're like a patented brand, it becomes part of your job and like making sure to address it. I think another one is just being innovative. So yes, you can maybe make a polyester product and try to knock off like a color within like 12 months. But then again, if we have like different fabrications, different collections, like different partnerships, different sizes, it is just kind of like makes the team like pushing the engine. So at the beginning, you're like, oh, wow, this is the same product that we have. So what can we do differently? So it's a mix of patent protection. I always tell like this funny story when I was in China and I was visiting like a factory, and one of them was one of the factories that copied our products, and they had our pictures everywhere, and even my picture there. And like when they saw us, they're like, "Oh, we love your product." And I was like, well, we love this color. We love this color. So there was like just a different culture, like, I guess, appreciation also, like maybe not the same level of awareness of like what copying means or infringement means in the US. So we had actually a good laugh and even took a group picture afterwards of like the people copying us. But yeah, it's definitely something you're very surprised how quick and nimble they are. Like they're checking your website. You have something new. You can be certain you will be copied within a very short time frame. If you don't have like legal protection, definitely like trademarks is always something like if you see they're taking your images, that's something you can prosecute. And then, trying to stay ahead of the game. I guess that's like competition makes us more innovative. I think that's like what we had to do and
just keep running.
Keep running.
I think the peppermint in linens, in bed linens, is such a smart. I'm such a fiend for like the cold side of the pillow or the cold part of the sheet. And even if peppermint doesn't do that, it will make me think that peppermint will make my sheets cooler.
Yeah,
which is
it does. Actually, it does.
Yeah, no, that's super smart. What an awesome suite of products you're building on. How many SKUs do you have now at this point? Lots.
Well, if you like count the weighted blankets as SKUs, we have like 120 different SKUs just for the weighted blanket. If you count in all the colors, all the sizes, right? From the different weights starting at like 5 pounds for kids, then going up to the king size with 30 pounds. So that's like something like I always want like people, when they come to our store, you should have all the breadth of the offering, all the colors, all the fabrications that you have. So we want to be that one-stop shop for the knitted weighted blanket. And then obviously then we started adding additional, like we have the warmables, which was one of the products, like our neck wrap, which is made with natural clay. So you can just pop it in a microwave for 3 minutes and it like just is weighted, but it's also warm. We have our body pillow, that is made out of natural like foam, of tree foam. So I'm like a big fan of like using like innovative materials that I find along the way. So a couple of years ago in Sri Lanka, I found like this farm that takes like tree sap and steams it into like, then makes a natural tree foam out of it. And it's like this very bouncy foam that makes a great body pillow or pillow. And it's non-toxic. So it's literally just foam, like from a tree that's steamed. There are no chemicals in it and it never falls flat. And just thinking about what are like these materials. And I think now I see myself like, now that we're further along in the journey and we have like the weighted blanket, like innovated in this, like how can we go back and take like unexpected spins and not making it too easy and say, well, let's just take another pillow that's filled with polyester, but like what are innovative materials, something that you maybe haven't seen in like your category. You take it from another category, like the peppermint, for example, but then there haven't been any peppermint sheets. So it's just kind of like, I think looking right and left. And I think a new category or like a niche category often comes from borrowing different territories and moving them into the edges. And then you get like a completely new product. And I think that's what I'm also trying to push my design team. Like, don't look at like a bedding company. Don't look into a mattress company, what they're doing, but look into another territory, like where people came up with very innovative, what are like, we're looking, for example, last week we were studying like a kayak, which is made out of like innovative paper material. So look at kind of really unexpected categories. A kayak has nothing to do with a weighted blanket, but you will find things and then kind of like taking them into like your new territory. And so we've won now like a lot of like, I think we've won more than 5 Red Dot Design Awards. We got the Fast Company Innovation Award for like our products. So I think when you kind of push like the envelope and you are thinking about like, what can I do new with the customer in mind, you will come up naturally with like more products that haven't existed in the market that you can easily then build on. Because when I was first thinking, okay, now we have the weighted blanket, but there was no other weighted blanket company before us. So I cannot just look like, oh yeah, when you have a mattress company, you have a pillow or you have something else. But like, how do you actually extend in a meaningful way, like the category, and what categories make sense when your hero SKU is a weighted blanket? Again, it's nothing that like I can go and check somewhere. I have to again reinvent it and build it, which is daunting in one hand, because again, we have to always reinvent the wheel. But I think in the last years, I've also seen there's a lot of like freedom and liberty that comes with it, because again, no one has done it before. So we can again push the envelope, we can try something. And I love kind of like taking like small steps, like working with small scale manufacturers where you can try something new. Maybe it's not a great product, but then like you try it out and you take like these risks, but then like maybe for every like 5th product, you get a really amazing new product that people are like, wow, I've never heard about. You can use peppermint or you can use tree foam for a pillow. So that's something that gets me also up every morning and gets me really excited.
Good luck, copycats. When you have this much innovation, good luck keeping up. Kathrin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's such a cool story. I am going to cherish my Bearaby blanket forever, as will my daughter. She took it right onto her bed. We have it on the couch, but when she went to bed, she's like, I need this. And she's had the best sleep of her life. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sending that. I really appreciate it. And if people want to keep up with your journey, where are you active on social platforms like LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me under Kathrin Hamm. Always happy to connect, exchange views. And then like our website is Bearaby.com and our socials, Instagram is my Bearaby.
And if you're a listener who has any sleep issues, you've got to go to Bearaby.com and check out the weighted blankets, the other products you have there. I'm sure I think for better or for worse, anxiety is probably a growth market in the world right now. Specifically, I feel like there's a lot of unsurety kind of out there right now. So I imagine it's a bit of a, for better or for worse, it's a growth industry.
For better or for worse.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C podcast. We'll see you next time.